today's session has been thrown together in fairly short order. Andrea Tokaji is here today to talk to us. Andrea is an admitted solicitor in the ACT Supreme Court, has 2 Masters of Law, has held legal roles since 2009, and is a trade international human rights lawyer. Andrea has worked as a policy expert in the Attorney General's Department. The Attorney General is appointed as the official protector of the rule of law, and it's their responsibility to speak out when the principles of the rule of law are being eroded. And many other government departments, including Prime Minister and Cabinet. As a political lobbyist, Angela has made over 18 parliamentary submissions on various human rights legal matters, including child trafficking, organ harvesting, refugees, and women's rights. She's published over 38 publications and has been a keynote speaker at over 36 national and international legal human rights conferences, and has taught law at university level. Andrea came to Australia as a child refugee from a communist country and is passionate about protecting people's inalienable rights, liberties, and God-given freedoms. I mean, there's a lot more I could say there, Andrea, but I think we've got enough to appreciate your credentials as a human rights and governance expert. So, hello, Andrea, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Russell.
Right, let's get into it, shall we? Now, the reason for this particular video today, and the reason it's a very short notice, is last week my EA came to me with an ASIC renewal notice, and it said that I had to get a director's digital ID to get it updated online. Now, that's the first I've heard about it. I understand that there's some fairly punitive charges if I don't do that. The deadline's the 30th of November, so that's like next week.
Yep, that's right.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you, Russell. Look, this is concerning for a few reasons. First of all, we've got a government who has amended a major piece of legislation known as the Corporations Act. And the Corporations Act covers so many bits and pieces around how we do business with each other, with government, internationally. And so with such a mammoth amendment, you would think that they would talk to the public about it. You would think that they would have an ability to consult and engage with the public sector. Now, as you say, not many people know about it. And in fact, not many accountants know the ins and outs. So it's really concerning. So the first step, let's get educated, let's get across it. Okay, what is it? Well, it is an amendment to the Corporations Act and the Treasury Act, and for 2 reasons. First of all, this covers our personal private information and data and our corporate information and data, and the way it engages with government and internationally. So the government's asking us to sign up on a new platform. They've created MyGov ID. So that's a brand new platform, different to MyGov. And the ABRS, Australian Business Registry Services. Now, the chairman, the commissioner of the ATO, Australian Taxation Office, is the registrar of the ABRS. So what we're seeing is intergovernmental link here with leadership. So the commissioner of ATO is now also registrar of this new government platform, ABRS. What's its purpose? Well, you jump on, you implement all of your personal private data into their database, and then you also give over your commercial information. What that means is anyone who's called a director is required to get this international 14-digit number. And this will follow you for life. Doesn't matter whether you're living overseas, whether you're doing business overseas, it's valid. You register once, only you can personally register. And this is your identifier for how many corporations you're a director of, if you sit on charities boards, if you run a Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander organisation, if you do anything else that's registered with ASIC currently as a director.
Right. Okay. I mean, there's a load there that we need to just unpick a little bit. First of all, I mean, everyone's got MyGov numbers now, and that's got all of our health on there and bits and bobs and tax and all the rest of it. I mean, what's the difference between this and just the MyGov?
Yeah.
Why is that? What's the big issue?
Yeah. So if you think about it this way, MyGov is your personal government platform. Health, Centrelink students, pensioners, Medicare, all of those things. MyGov ID is a corporate. So company directors, charities, self-managed super funds, Aboriginal organisations, all of that data is now on the MyGov ID platform, and it's been transitioning. The other platform, of course, is the ABRS one that's interlinked. So these new platforms are there to capture your private and business information.
So you're saying that basically this if I'm a director, anyone is a director of any particular entity, all of my personal information and all of my commercial information is held in one database, if you like, or portal, or whatever you want to call it. That's the first thing. Is that right?
Yeah, so when you're registering for your Director Digital ID, you have to provide, for example, birth certificate, citizenship, license number, Medicare number, all of those particulars that define you as a human being, and the way you do business as a legal entity, because a person is recognized under law as a legal entity, and that person carries on within that corporate setting. So the company is a legal person because a person registered it.
Okay, so and that's never happened before. So that means this will contain not just my professional, but also my personal information. Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of assurances, has the government given us any assurances at all that my data won't be compromised or used in any way that it currently should be, or that they decide that they want to use it in another way later on down the line? Have they done that? Have they given us anything yet?
That's a great question, Russell, because I went to ANU, it was hacked. I'm with Optus, it was hacked. I'm with Medibank Private, it's been hacked. So we're so conscious of this issue of not only hacking, but our digital privacy. So to date, no, the government has not provided any safeguards, any protections, not only technologically, but also in relation to your privacy. In fact, the opposite is true. So what the registrar of the ABRS has said, where all this information is going to be contained, so that's Chris Jordan, Commissioner of the ATO, he has said that go get this number, upload all your information, we'll hold it within the ABRS. That'll be your platform to do business from now on. Government will communicate with you as a business person. You'll communicate with the government as a business person on this platform. But by the way, this number's international, and this number will be used for the rest of your life. And we're considering taking this number public.
Right. Okay. I've got to rein you back a little bit there, because once again, there's loads in that. Just going back to this thing about assurances, they haven't. I mean, there are two things. There's the hacking bit, but then there's also how do we know a government in the future? I mean, this is not conspiracy. It happens all the time. It's happened over the past 2 years. Yeah. How do we know that the government might say, okay, well, we're using it for this particular function, but now we're going to use it for whatever it may be? There's been no assurances on that level either, I guess. No.
That's right. Yeah. And look, the issue, what we're looking at here is the Privacy Act. So what does a Privacy Act contain, and what assurances does it provide? Well, actually, the Privacy Act is so broad that we actually saw a violation of those privacies in the last 2.5, 3 years under COVID mandates. So those mandates suspended our privacy so that the government could go on and do their business under emergency powers. So there's still a question in relation to whether the government had overreached there. And a lot of people are saying, yes, they did. So this principle is the same in this instance, except it's in the corporate sector. And you're right, the international move is towards a digital currency. The international move is towards centralizing power, and the international move is towards centralizing data as well. Now, logic will tell you that if it's centralized, it's more vulnerable. And as you stated very eloquently at the beginning, this is a matter of rule of law, because it goes to the heart of a constitutional democracy, which Australia is, as to the separation of powers. Normally, we would have Parliament writing the laws, the courts testing the laws, but in between those two processes, the executive, the institutions such as the police force, or the public servants basically, ASIC, ATO, all of those institutions have the power, or regulatory bodies have the authority to actually make sure that those laws that are being made in Parliament and tested in the courts are applied properly. And so what we're seeing is the ABRS, as we know, and the ATO, the public servants, is a government body, so that they come under law. They come under Corporations Act, Treasury Act, and the like, the ATO Act. And so they have legal authority to do their business, right? And under the legal authority, the law, they have regulations, how to do their business. And then under that, they've got policies and rules within their organization. So there's 3 tiers really of rules and regs. Now within that, they have the authority to ask you for this information, to contain this information, and to use this information. So the registrar's current position is no one will be able to access your directed digital ID unless it's the courts or tribunals, unless it's a public servant, unless it's a government body. But the registrar has said into the future, they're going to go to consultation. We all know that what that means when government says that. They're going to go to consultation and consider making these directed digital IDs public. Now, if they do that, that's the question.
Right. Okay. So, right, I want to unpack that a little bit as well. So basically, there's been no assurances that they're about how they're going to use this data. There's not even a trust us. So that's one thing. Why is the registrar considering making our numbers public? Why? What's the purpose of that? What's the stated purpose?
There is no stated purpose. You can jump onto the ABRS website and look at their vision and get a bio of Chris Jordan, broadly speaking, but there is no stated purpose for going public with it. Now, if we think about it logically, if this number is international, and if there is a push towards centralized information and digital currency, then what we've got is the ability to digitize everything and then obviously operate on that level. So everything will be operated internationally within that digital realm, right? So if that's the case, then accessing these numbers internationally, for example, if you want to put money into a bank account in Sweden, Sweden can look up your directed digital ID and see that you sit on that charity. You've had your time on that board, you're director of those 2 companies, and maybe they don't like what you stand for. Maybe they're not too keen on what you're passionate about. The bank in Switzerland might say, by the way, we don't want your business. Right. And that's the fear here in the midst of cancel culture.
Right, okay. And just going back a second, on this. Why do they want this to be an international number? I mean, you've said that, you know, we believe, I mean, there is a move for more international cooperation, but why would this be an international number? I mean, most businesses are, 95% of businesses turnover, I don't know, less than $500,000. You know, why do they want this to be an international number?
That's not clearly stated at all. But in fact, it's an international number when you sign up and you have it for life, and there is no option to have a national number. So that's our only option. Right.
Okay. And what kind of, and when we say, you know, a director's digital ID, is that the actual right phrase, a director's digital ID?
Yeah, you can call it a director ID, but right. I want to emphasize that it's a digital number plugged into the digital system.
It's not just medium and large organizations, is it?
What it is anyone who is listed as a director with ASIC. So that means directors of companies, all shapes and sizes, directors sitting on boards of charities, Aboriginal organisations, or self-managed super funds. If you are a listed director with ASIC, and you can look this up on a link, and I can provide that link to you, then you are listed as a director. You're required to get the director ID by 30th of November, which is next Wednesday. And there is unfortunately penalty attached for those who don't. Now, the penalty is quite severe, but I don't imagine on the 1st of December, the government's going to hand out $1 million civil penalties to everyone who hasn't registered.
Hold on, go back again on that. If I don't get my digital director's ID registered by the 30th of November, I'm potentially liable for a $1 million fine.
Civil penalty, that's right, according to the Corporations Act. So some have suggested that this is just an option. You don't need to opt in because this is an invitation to contract with government, and we can say no to contracts. But in fact, because it's written into the Corporations Act, because it's a requirement to do business, you won't be able to do business without it.
Right.
That is how the government has set it up, unless you're a sole trader or a partnership.
Right.
Now, that is beneficial, right? So if you're thinking about what we're talking about and you're saying to yourself, I do not want anything to do with this, you've got a few options. First of all, you can, obviously there's some applications. First of all, you can get an extension of time application. I can provide that to you as well. So this extension of time, particularly over Christmas, New Year's, you can consider this for a few months, discuss it with your family, with your accountant. Secondly, if you register over the phone, you won't need to upload all of your private ID to this platform. You don't need a MyGov ID platform. I'll give you the number to call, okay? It's a Canberra number. So there's two options there already. Third option, you can, particularly if you're not earning squillions, you can think about closing your company down and reopening your business as a sole trader or partnership. Now that's easy to do. It's an application with ASIC, okay? So that's a third option. Fourth option, of course, you can opt out and you can not get it and choose to sell up and, do other things. Now, as I said, this ID into the future, because there's still a few teething problems with the platforms. We know that the next deadline is the 5th of April. So next year, 5th of April, no one will be able to register as a company before registering for the digital ID. So it'll be a requirement even before you consider setting up a company, a charity, or an organisation.
Right. Okay. I mean, I can understand the convenience of a digital system. I think everybody can. And I suspect, well, I'm quite sure this law won't go away. I think the big issue for any director of any size organisation is really the checks and balances to make sure that it's being used properly. But I just wanted to ask you, Andrea, if my director's digital ID becomes public, I mean, isn't there and you know, cancel culture is huge at the moment, and I'm sure it will disappear at some point, but not anytime soon. It's ruining some businesses and organisations, and we've seen that. Isn't there a danger that activist groups will use this to force others to cancel me or my business if they don't like or disagree with my affiliations, my professional affiliations or investments? So, for example, if I've got, I mean, God knows how many people have got self-managed supers. There must be thousands and thousands and thousands.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, they're directors, but I mean, they're just normal people that have gone about their business, and they're trying to maximise their retirement fund. Let's say, you know, me and my wife, we've got a self-managed super fund, say, that includes, I don't know, holiday homes that I rent out. Would that kind of information be available, and can an affordable sort of housing activist group, say, decide the best way to further their cause is to get me sacked from my existing job by applying pressure to the organisation, or if I've got investments in mining or farming or something like that, for example, isn't there a danger of something like that happening?
Absolutely. So, as a trained international human rights lawyer, this is my concern. We mentioned before that the Privacy Act does not protect us in this instance. However, there have been no blatant violations of the Privacy Act or any other law here. So we cannot organise a class action. We cannot take the government to court because there have been no violations, no harm at this stage. Into the future, there may be, and cancel culture may be a part of that conversation. But for now, the Privacy Act doesn't protect us insofar as this legislation, but the Privacy Act hasn't been violated either. So it's a tricky one, right? So this is my concern. If the registrar, what he's saying is true, he will take this to consultation to consider making the number public. When it is made public, who will have access to it and how will they use that information? That is definitely a concern. And of course, people's financial, records and history is a very private thing. And if you have a digital government platform where it's hackable and accessible, that makes us very vulnerable as individuals and families and communities. So if it's internationally accessible, if it's an international number, and if it's made public and searchable, then there is a real concern there in relation to not only privacy, but protections. So at this stage, once again, the government has not assured us those protections. My suggestion is that we do lobby the registrar, which means I've provided a draft lobby letter to the registrar in relation to this matter, and that's on my website. So I'm happy to share it with you. Please download it. And listen, the greater business community at large needs to make a noise about this. We need to meet with our local federal members. This is federal legislation. If you meet with your state members, they'll just send you to federal, okay? Meet with your local federal member and say, I've just heard about this. I'm a bit concerned. What do you think? They may not even know about it. They may not appreciate the privacy elements of it. We need to educate them and then call them to action.
well, we want educating ourselves, I think. Crikey. But I mean, the thing is, I don't think any responsible director would say that they have a problem with transparency in terms of who's in charge of what where. Even in the UK, you can go to Companies House, and it's been like this for a long time, that you can go onto the website and you can find out who was a director here, what businesses they were involved with. I mean, that's fine. But the difference with this, though, is that it is digital. It is completely connected to all of your personal data as well. So, I mean, and I don't think it's a law that's likely to get repealed, as you said. And in many ways, we've got to accept digital into our lives in some way, but it has to be managed. But in the meantime, I think you've gone over a few things about how we might be able to limit our exposure and what we can do to sort of register our concerns as company directors, or what our bosses might be able to do. You've just done one seminar. You've got another one this evening. I don't think this video will be ready in time for that, but you're going to do another one. When will those take place, and how can people register?
Yeah, so it's a reality that the deadline is the 30th of November, but that doesn't mean, once again, you'll be fined on the 1st of December. So jump on board on my website, andreaconsults.org, and just book in to those seminars. We'll go through all of this, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to take as long as needs to answer all your questions. And of course, each scenario is different, and it is difficult to have a one-on-one conversation with people on these platforms, but I'll do my best.
Right.
Now, with the caveat that I'm not an accountant, I'm not a financial advisor, that's not my role. But the first step is to understand the legislation and regulation and the parameters within that, and what is possible, what are our options. So that's the space that I'm creating, and that's a conversation we'll be having.
Great, okay. And I'll just let people know here as well, there's a $50 charge for this, but it's not a great way of making a fortune. What you're doing in terms of lobbying and all the rest of it, Andrea, takes up a lot of resources, and some of that is going to that, and the advice that people are getting is certainly is more than money well spent, I think, that's for sure, especially with someone with your experience and expertise. So, I mean, it's a really important subject. It can't be ignored. If you're a business, small business, so even a sole trader considering becoming a business, get onto Andrea's lectures. If you've got a boss who's a director, and most of you who are executive assistants do have that, maybe just point them Andrea's way, because I think this needs to be addressed, and it's going to go on for quite some time, I think, Andrea, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you for coming along. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, thank you, Russell. Just one more thing. When you come on board with a legal lecture, we will spend, about an hour with the lecture, about an hour with questions and answers. I'll provide you with all the notes, the PowerPoint presentation. I'll provide you with all the required application forms and with that lobby letter. So don't worry about it. And it's all on my website, andreaconsults.org.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea. And I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon.
Thanks so much, Russell.